Welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to summarize Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. Of Mice and Men is a novella written by John Steinbeck in 1937. It is set in the 1930s during the Great Depression in California and follows the story of two migrant workers, George and Lennie, who dream of owning their own farm. The book begins with George and Lennie walking to a ranch where they have been hired to work. Lennie, who is mentally disabled, is obsessed with petting soft things, like mice, but often accidentally kills them with his strength. Chapter 1 The novel opens with two migrant workers, George and Lennie, traveling towards a ranch in Soledad, California, where they have been hired to work. George is a small, sharp-witted man, while Lennie is large and slow-witted but physically powerful. They are traveling together because they have a special bond, with George taking on the role of protector and caregiver for Lennie, who is prone to getting into trouble. They discuss their shared dream of one day owning a small farm and living off the land. At the ranch, they meet the boss and his son, Curly, who is aggressive and always looking for a fight. They also meet Slim, a skilled mule driver who is respected by all the men. George and Lennie are assigned to work in the fields, and George warns Lennie to stay away from Curly and his wife, who is also on the ranch. Chapter 2 The next day, George and Lennie begin work in the fields alongside the other ranch hands. They meet Candy, an old swamper who lost his hand in an accident, and they also meet Carlson, a fellow ranch hand who is obsessed with his gun. Slim gives Lennie a puppy, and Lennie is thrilled to have something to care for. George and Lennie continue to talk about their dream of owning a farm, and Candy offers to contribute his life savings to help make it a reality. That night, Curly's wife makes an appearance and flirts with the men, causing tension and resentment among them. Chapter 3 The next day, George, Lennie, and Candy talk more about their dream farm, and George begins to believe that it might actually be possible. Curly becomes increasingly jealous and angry, especially after he confronts Slim and accuses him of having an affair with his wife. That night, George and Lennie discuss their plans for the farm with Crooks, a black stable hand who is bitter and lonely due to the racism he faces. Curly's wife also comes into the barn and taunts Crooks, reminding him of his place on the ranch. As the night goes on, Lennie becomes increasingly agitated and violent, causing George to fear that their dream is slipping away. Chapter 4 The next day, the men go to a nearby town to watch a horseshoe tournament. Lennie accidentally kills his puppy while petting it too roughly, and he hides the body in the barn. Curly's wife comes into the barn and tries to talk to Lennie, but he becomes frightened and accidentally breaks her neck while trying to silence her. When the men discover what has happened, they go on a hunt for Lennie, led by Curly, who wants revenge. George realizes that they will never be able to realize their dream farm and decides to take matters into his own hands. He finds Lennie by the river where they have been instructed to meet in case of trouble, and he comforts Lennie before shooting him in the back of the head. Chapter 5 The next day, the men on the ranch discover what has happened and are left to deal with the aftermath. Curly is devastated by the loss of his wife and seeks revenge on Lennie, while George struggles with his guilt over killing his friend. The other men try to comfort him and offer their support, but he is inconsolable. Slim tells George that he did the right thing by ending Lennie's suffering, and George is left alone to contemplate the loss of his dream. Chapter 6 Chapter 6 The novel ends with George and Candy talking about their lost dream of owning a farm. Candy regrets not having done more to help George and Lennie achieve their goal, while George is left with nothing but the memory of the dream they shared. As they talk, they are interrupted by the other ranch hands playing horseshoes outside. They hear the sound of a car approaching, and they realize that the authorities are coming to investigate Lennie's death. George is resigned to his fate, knowing that he will be held responsible for Lennie's death, and he laments the loss of their dream. The novel ends with George and Candy talking about their lost dream of owning a farm. Candy regrets not having done more to help George and Lennie achieve their goal, while George is left with nothing but the memory of their dream. The novel's tragic ending underscores the theme of the impossibility of achieving the American dream, especially for those at the margins of society, like George, Lennie, and Candy. The novel's title, Of Mice and Men, comes from a line in a poem by the Scottish poet Robert Burns: "The best laid plans of mice and men often go awry." This quote speaks to the novel's central message that even the best intentions can be thwarted by circumstance and fate, and that dreams can be shattered by the harsh realities of the world. Thanks for watching. To read the full version of the book, click on the link in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for similar content.